Alright, as I'm looking at this, troubleshooting the walk cycle, I realized that we just didn't go back and set the end. So the delay that we're seeing inside the walk cycle is it just playing out the rest of this timeline before it goes back and loops back to the beginning. So I'm glad that we did that together so that you can see how to troubleshoot different things in your animations, that one specifically. All we need to do to fix that is come to the end of our cycle and make sure that this particular pose is going to be the very next pose that we should see in our animation cycle. And it is. So we'll come to the end of our animation and we'll come here to this little icon. We'll say trim document duration to work area. And let's see, there we go. Set end of work area, which brings the end of our time segment to the end of the keyframes that we have for it. Now, if we come up here to preview our animation, we'll go ahead and set forever, preview. We'll be able to see that it should be corrected, and it is. So we have our walk cycle, and I see that there's still, there's one more issue that we need to fix, and that is he's only bobbing once. So since we're in a cycle, he needs to bob twice. So let's take a look at that. Cancel out of here. Go back to our torso, positioning. And what we have here is that he comes up on the full extension of his leg. So when we go to the opposite full extension of the leg, this position, he should also be bobbing up. So we're going to right click, select first on this keyframe, right click, say copy keyframe. Okay. And it's not going to work, so let's see. Go ahead and set another keyframe here, clicking right here, which sets another keyframe. Now what we can do is select on that copy keyframe, select on this, and paste. And when I do that, you can see that the positioning changes. Yep, it's popped up here now. So let's see how this is going to play out. Now I can see that this is the end keyframe, and there is no in-betweens for it to resolve to. So what that's going to tell me is that it's going to pop up when it goes back down. So we need to set another keyframe on the end here and put the end position to match the beginning position so that it can loop properly. So I'm copying and pasting this information as well. Right. Alright, you know, the reason we're seeing the torso only is because this is still visible when we come to the very end. We're seeing frame 8, which doesn't have any legs in it, just the torso. Alright, so looks like we might be okay now. Let's go ahead and preview our animation. We'll set looping to forever, preview. Alright, so we got a little bob. The end frame is hooking up properly with the beginning frame. It's looping, and we've got our legs and arms swinging, and this will now become our template for creating our sprite animation over it. Alright, very good. Let's go ahead and save this GIF as walk cycle 2. And now we will go ahead and scale this down to the proper size for our character. Alright, in this segment we're going to talk about how to scale this down and begin to create our pixel art over this preliminary state. So we are at this point done with our animation. So we're going to go ahead and continue. We know that it's in the condition that we want it now. So if we play through it, that's fine. We can also loop our animation here. Plays back at a very high rate of speed. And that is a good point to make at this point, is that sometimes your previewers do not allow you to set the frame rate. But know in game art and animation that frame rate in code is just a term that's used by programmers to communicate with animators. Animators understand frame rate, the number of frames per second or per minute is animation speak, but programmers inside the code, they're not playing it back at so many frames per second. They're playing it back, and the actual rate of speed is scaled. It's a scaled time frame. So if your animation is not playing back at the speed at which it needs to, then you need to work with your programmer in order to increase or decrease the amount of speed that your animation is playing. Also, if you have animation inside your game engine and it is it slows down or lags, it also may be a problem associated with how much content, how many assets within the game that the code is trying to render at one time. So there are a lot of things that affect frame rate. That term, the speed at which the animation is playing back, and those you can troubleshoot with your programmer in the code. Those need to be altered. There's not much you can do about the actual rate at which it plays back if you can't control that within the previewer or within the code. Alright, so the next step is to get this down to a size where we're going to create our pixel art. So we don't want to reduce the size after we get in there and do our pixel art, so we're going to do it before. I'm going to find the keyframe which I feel is probably going to take up the most real estate here, and I think this is it. So we want to first reduce our area around our art. So I'm going to try 180 by 180. And let's see, oops, it's just barely on his foot there. Okay. Alright, good. It's pretty much all covered. The next step is to make sure that he's walking on the ground. So we see here and here that he's walking on the ground, but our others need to be pulled down a little bit. Standing on the ground, we're going to select that, going to our move tool, and we're going to bring down this character. So he's walking on the ground. Okay. This one. here. They're linked now. The layers are linked to the frames, so we want to be careful. Alright, that speaks to being on the toe. Alright, so now we have real estate, and they're all on the ground walking. We're going to go to, let's see, image size. We're going to go ahead and scale that down to the correct size. Character's going to be 128. And there we have our new size. Enlarge that. And we can go ahead and preview that. Maybe here if we'd like. Alright. Find what we need it for. Go ahead and save that scaled. Alright, now frame by frame we can go ahead in here and begin to revise our art. We want to select them along this area though, rather than along this area. As you can see, when I select another set over here, you can see what happens. It turns them on, and then if I deselect, it shuts them off over here. So in order to fix that, if you should happen to do that, you can just go ahead back here and find the legs that are appropriate to that particular one and turn them back on. But so you're selected on the legs that would be modified when you come in here, and depending on what character you have, you're going to just go ahead and start painting over that. And what I do is, like I had done for the others, is to go ahead and begin to paint in my darkest values first. And continue to build up those values as I go. This will be the forward value. Okay. And I always make the limbs a little bit wider, as stated, you know, in the pixel character creation demo. Make it a little wider so that you have room to come back in here and knock out all of that, all the gradients that happen as a result of working in RGB mode in Photoshop. Okay, so let's continue to build up those highlights of my characters. Let's go drop down a bit. give you some idea of how I proceed with my sprite animations. And you would continue to do the same for each of these. When you get one of them done, she can go back and do the same as we did before and darken the one highlighted limb and lighten the one darkened limb. Or you can paint all your limbs the same. Go ahead and do that so you can see that. Now that you know which ones are behind and which ones are in front, okay, you can begin by painting them all the same color so that there's less transition work to do. If you like working that way. Let's see. Just build up your highlights. My light source is from straight above, so it's hitting the tops of the character line. So as I continue to lighten my paint, grabbing just the tops of those character lines there, and reducing the size of my brush as I go. Okay, you get the idea of how I tend to do it. And again, with each artist, you will work out your own individual pipeline.